Welcome back to the Swiss Campaign Abridged, where last time we settled in to our new frontline positions. We also nuked our new frontline positions just to get rid of some enemies and to get rid of some nukes indeed. We then started a new plan. I'm going to control all of the other factions to force a final battle upon our borders. Can the world beat us if we don't contest the air and they throw everything they have at us? So I've just done a fair bit of body shifting to control other leaders and got some of the enemies to attack me. Still not quite all of them. I was doing it in dribs and drabs really. So you can see we are being attacked, but not by everything that's standing around, or even by the majority of things that are standing around. Although that's partially because the enemy are going to be doing the cycling thing, where the AI will continuously attack you with a couple of units, and every time they stop attacking, something else will attack instead. And that's good for the AI to do, because that's the way they can potentially out-organize us even if they can't win any of the individual fights. So will they have enough units to do it? We'll just have to find out. We're going to be slaying their troops as they advance due to the massive stat differential. Although the enemy will have the aerial advantage, I'm not going to be contesting the air at all, so they can bomb anything they want and do all the close air support they want as well. I also did have some troops dedicated to fighting potential naval invasions. We don't need them anymore because I've already gone around and looked at what the AI is doing. They're not going to do a naval invasion, although actually I remember seeing a couple were set up, but they were to two locations that are on our front line, so we don't need dedicated troops to defend behind the front line, and also they didn't show up. So here's a look at the scores. As of now, our casualties will begin to rise, and we don't have that many troops to replace them, so there is the potential option that the enemy could kill us all, that we're killing them pretty fast as well, heading up towards that 30 million kills mark. And you can see on the left there, more and more troops are coming to join the front line because I had loads of armies that were elsewhere reassigned to come and join the fight. One thing I was wondering is how many guys we're losing to close air support. It says we've taken about 50,000 casualties, and in the air war thing there you can see we're taking constant close air support damage. But that damage is just a number. I didn't know if that is how many troops per day are dead or how many companies per day are dead, who knows. And it turns out there is a way to actually look at that, which I later discovered while poking around, but we'll get to that in a second. Here I am playing as the enemy again. We need more. There are still more armies that I hadn't assigned to the war across the world. So we're grabbing some more. Here it's Afghanistan coming in for the fight. They've got tons of divisions to use. We're just going to get more and more of the minor nations involved. And many of them did actually have quite big armies that just weren't doing anything. So we have to wait for them to show up in some cases as well, but it's going to happen over time. Now I'm back to poking around, trying to find that information I want. To what extent are we being bombed to death? It says here, our troops bombed 10,000 over 5 years, and I thought, well, that's not too many. But that number doesn't represent how many casualties you've taken to troops bombed. As it turns out, it's just another abstract number, possibly related to the number that's appearing in the air combat panel there. They've done 10,000 things, but that doesn't mean 10,000 casualties were taken. So we still don't really know what's going on there, but we're very close to discovering the truth, as we'll see. First though, I'm back again playing as the enemy, because it's time for even more to be thrown onto the front line. I don't know why I was doing this in sections. I occasionally went round again and got more troops to add in. So here we're getting the reserves, like Germany here has 200 divisions standing around doing not very much. We're going to throw those 200 divisions into the offensive, and many of the other nations, especially the USA I seem to recall, had hundreds of divisions just standing around in their interior territory not doing anything. So loads more stuff is going to be coming in to make sure this battle doesn't stop, to give the enemy an opportunity to out-organize us and to keep their close air support going. We're actually losing some organization there on the Italian front. Looks like they've got a chance if they just keep fighting. And now the moment of truth. I was poking around in the theater menu up here, clicked this piece of paper, and this is what I'm looking for, although still not quite. It tells you how things are going in the theater over the last year, so a limited data set, but that does happen to contain what I'm looking for. This tooltip finally tells me I've lost 90,000 plus troops to air attacks. That's a lot more than I thought, and it's a bit suspicious because if we've lost that much manpower, how do we even have any manpower left? Because that was about the amount we started this bit of the conflict with. My manpower is actually going up somehow. I think it might be because we're still converting over people from the newly captured territories in Italy who are being forced into our army. Although I also suspect it could be glitchy because our switch to having both fascism and democratic style national focuses much earlier might have somehow doubled on top of each other and multiplied or something, so we have more manpower than we're supposed to have for our population. It's a possibility, I don't know. Somehow, despite our 0% war support, we're still dragging people out to fight in the war. We've surpassed 30 million casualties, and interestingly you might note, we have only like 50-something thousand casualties on our side, despite me just saying that we've taken 90,000 casualties to air attacks just in the last year. Well, there's no explaining that, the data is just different there. Who's lying to me? I don't know. This is another Hitler in the bunker situation. The advisors don't want to tell me what's actually happening for one reason or another. Well, at least this time, what's actually happening is probably still pretty good. We're absolutely slaughtering the enemy on all fronts, but it's just the beginning. There are plenty more troops piling into this war. We can see them walking from far and wide. Here's the big queue coming from the Western Hemisphere. They're all landing in Spain and then joining this huge column, feeding who knows how many troops into the front line. Probably going to be in trouble once they get there. But yes, they are coming. Thanks to the AI being off, they can't stop all of my reassignments, so most stuff's going over there. We could of course have even more stuff on the way, but I just couldn't be bothered. But yes, all over the map we're seeing troops gradually walking towards us, so while we are defeating the units we're in combat with now, those combats will be able to continue. That's the only hope the AI has. Probably though, these new units coming in will be of inferior quality. Perhaps that doesn't matter though. If the strategy here for the AI is to out-organize me, all they have to do is fight me with something, and virtually any unit's going to have effectively the same stats in a fortified battle. Our casualties continue to mount, and so too somehow does our manpower reserve. Still not sure how they're not killing us, or whether they even are killing us. The various numbers here are difficult to interpret. Well, we still seem to have the same amount of troops despite losing 20,000 guys recently, apparently. And you can see a few of our frontline units do have missing pixels on their strength bars. They've killed some of us and deorganized some of us as well. The real pressure is down here in this corner again. We're seeing some serious loss of organization in that one particular spot, to the extent I was forced to do some gameplay. I started trying to move units along the line, which doesn't always happen because if they get attacked while moving, they'll get stopped for a while. Handily, they're not attacking quite as much in the middle as they are on the edges, so we can very slowly move the division. It keeps teleporting back to participate in fights happening back where it was because of Hearts of Iron magic. Eventually we'll reinforce that position. Had to do something similar just to the north, where it looks like we're on the verge of being out-organized, so it really can happen. Just absolute human wave tactics can push us back thanks to organization. But the only weakness is gameplay. If they can't out-organize everyone along the line, we can shuffle guys around to try and keep organization high at the key locations. And here was my eventual strategy. I've set a full-back line just behind that front line, so we've got that defended position back there. And then I can one by one take units in the fight and eventually convince them to leave. All they need to do is spend a day or two sitting on that second line. The organization will replenish, and then they go back in at full organization, where they can then last for many more weeks of combat. So with this giving them a day off strategy, no more fighting continuously for months as they have been doing so far, our guys are less annoyed about the whole affair and can go back to killing the endless waves of Global Alliance troops. And with that, the fighting's actually coming to an end. You might see elsewhere the units aren't really attacking anymore, and that's because they're just super dead. Even with the AI on offensive plan, if they don't have any strength in their divisions, it will still cancel attacks, and things are really starting to cool down. Our casualties there claim to be under 100,000 still, despite being well over 100,000 on the other thing, and that's just for 1 year, so who knows what's going on with that. The enemy have lost over 40 million troops in their offensives, and they don't have that many more. There are apparently like 10 million plus, 20 million perhaps even troops somewhere else. Some of them are nearby actually. We can see them hanging around on Corsica, doing nothing for now, but we'll come back to those guys actually. Just a couple of last attacks still coming in. The war is sort of over, and we've sort of won. We did actually start losing manpower in the end, so maybe if it had gone on even longer, there was a chance of us actually being depleted, especially by those air attacks. Well, now what we're going to do is activate the AI and see what they do now that they've woken up from their fever dream. How are they going to react? Well, the main thing they do is take loads of their troops and start sending them away. Well, I say troops, loads of their divisions and start sending them away. All of the dead divisions start moving off that front line. And of course, they're going to start nuking us again. Still not a problem as long as they're not nuking the actual front line. That's not really going to affect the scores in any way. I wonder if there is a way in the game to defeat divisions, because all of these empty divisions are walking off. Maybe a division can't be actually outright deleted by being killed in battle. You just get an empty division that then has to go and sit somewhere until it one day gets its manpower back. Well, off they go. Most of them go back to doing what they were doing before, which is nothing before I told the AI to commit to the offensive. So they'll just stand around, and some divisions will be left on the front line also standing around, but also with very few troops. But of course there are some troops left alive as mentioned, and here are some of them. I saw them in the sea there, tried to send out some submarines to do something about it, but that was too late. At the very same time, those troops land, so all of a sudden they've done it. Now that the AI's been switched on, it seems to have spotted the opportunity to just naval invade us, and they straight up did it. So well done to the AI, that was a good idea and they've finally gotten around to doing it. Can we react to this? I peeled stuff off all the other fronts to contain this pocket, and we stopped them doing massive damage, although it's a very ugly stain we now have on our territory. I've got some units counter-attacking by accident by the looks of things. They're just trying to drive to the other side. We don't have any fuel, so it's quite hard for us to move units into new positions. It takes forever. Luckily, the enemy weren't too aggressive down there. The nukes are at it again, this time nuking actual troops and taking one of our divisions, or a couple of our divisions, down to very low health. Those losses will start to mount. If they just nuked a few places on our front line, they could drain all of our manpower pretty easily at this stage, I think. Well, that's their decision. I think the AI likes to nuke cities as mentioned before, so if we strategically don't have too many cities under direct occupation, then things are fine. The pocket situation got worse and worse though, because reinforcements could just pour in through the docks that are there, so the enemy strength was going to gradually increase. I tried to counterattack thinking we have to close this off right now. However, we couldn't do it. These attacks are just failing. Perhaps because we have no fuel, that's debuffing us. The enemy are defending, that's buffing them. And our units were never that good. It was always bonuses allowing us to fight so favourably. So these generic attacks aren't going to be all that good. And in the end, I gave up on this. I just cancelled the attacks. The enemy will continue to pour new divisions into the pocket, and we're just in trouble. My reaction was to go back to basics. I thought, let's try and pull our lines back to our original Switzerland border positions. The nukes are still coming in. There's a unit that's totally dead right there. Well, that's just going to keep happening at this stage. The enemy certainly can win this war from here. I'm going to do something very dodgy, try and pull back in a sort of orderly way to pull myself around the enemy's pocket with those units on the Italian front and get back without everything being a chaotic mess. This actually mostly works apart from one stack of units which does get caught out behind enemy lines. We're being screwed over by the fact we can't move, so the enemy can very easily sweep in where there are gaps using their fuel and cut us off. In this case though, it wasn't that bad because our units are strong enough that while the enemy are coming at them from several directions trying to take them out, they actually couldn't do it, and we very slowly make our way back towards our front line, open up this weird salient on the front line that's technically connected, and now we can gradually try to move through that salient in between all the fighting to go back to the positions I had in mind. Although what happened after that was I couldn't be bothered to finish the plan of going all the way back to the Switzerland borders, and instead I activated nuke debug. I decided that what we're going to do is deploy our secret weapon. In the plot of this campaign, we had a failsafe. If the enemy became too overwhelming, we've got a special button we can press that will set off some explosives hidden below the mountains. So at some point on the 4th of June 1947, the entire area is simply launched into space by a gigantic explosion, killing absolutely everybody involved. Well, not quite, because nukes aren't actually that powerful in the game. Even when a couple of hundred blow up at the same time, it just kills some divisions. So the fighting actually continues straight after that. But I'm going to consider this the final moment in the campaign, and in my headcanon, everybody is dead. Let's look at the actual stats in the game. We've gone over 100,000 casualties, however you might note we have tons of manpower. Highly suspicious, we're just getting manpower from somewhere. My possible theory is that when I nuked everything, it took out all of the air bases, so all of the air crew manpower was returned to the pool, and perhaps there was loads of that since I did have like 10,000 planes in operation. My vague memory is that when you make a wing of 1,000 planes, it takes 40,000 manpower, but that's just for fighters, maybe it's different for bombers and stuff. So maybe somehow there was 700,000 manpower hidden around that came out of their holes once everything got blown up. The air war situation, by the way, has just been nothing. The AI really forgot to keep bombing us after we just gave up on fighting in the air. I think they're just so scared of the prospect of us bothering to launch our planes that they're not even trying. They don't know we don't have any fuel and that all of our airfields are blown up, I suppose, at this stage. The AI may not actually have any planes itself, that's a possibility as well. Who knows? The air war just went away, and that likely contributed heavily to the enemy not being able to actually take us down because they stopped bombing our fortifications at some point. Well, that's that. That's the end of this campaign. Actually winning in any real sense in the game would be impossible, but we're going to say we won because we took out virtually all of the world's armies in those wars, and in the true canon, Switzerland doesn't even exist anymore. There's just a gigantic hole going down to the mantle of the Earth. You might note we have some very high-level radars that can see everything all over the planet thanks to our cheaty upgrades, so nothing gets past us. Although the main thing that's going to be revealing is that the enemy don't have any planes or aren't doing anything with them. There goes our capital getting nuked a few more times in quick succession, Zurich too, as we look at the final scores. And officially this war was a draw according to the game. We killed most of the enemy, but no particular territorial changes have been made, so it's about even. This war would probably continue in game forever, even with me no longer really cheating. We still seem to have the enemy locked down. I wonder if we'd be nuked into oblivion eventually. Well, I didn't bother playing on to find out, probably could have, but I suppose I just got bored and left. So why don't you leave this video? Thanks for watching this series. Coming soon, I have no idea.